MafiaBoss furious at the sight of his maid's bruises. "Who did this to you?" Alice Hughes eased the heavy door shut behind her, praying the sound wouldn't echo through the pre-dawn silence of the Ferrara estate. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. She slipped off her sneakers and set them down softly on the marble floor, wincing at the faint scuff they made. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest, bruises blooming beneath her uniform where no one could see. Maybe, just maybe, no one had noticed she'd been gone all night. "Where the hell were you?" The voice sliced through the darkness like a blade. Alice's stomach dropped. She looked up to see Leonardo Ferrara standing at the top of the grand staircase, his broad shoulders rigid and his tattooed hands gripping the railing so hard his knuckles had turned white. He was still wearing yesterday's clothes, a white dress shirt now wrinkled and unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves pushed up to reveal forearms corded with tension. Dark circles smudged beneath his obsidian eyes, and stubble shadowed his sharp jaw. He had been waiting. Alice's mouth went dry. Leonardo's stare pinned her in place, half in shadows and half in the weak morning light spilling through the tall windows of his New York mansion. In the 3 years she'd worked as his live-in maid, Alice had seen that menacing glare directed at others, at trembling business associates, disobedient subordinates, even once at a rival who dared show up unannounced at the Ferrara estate. But never at her. Now all that cold fury bore down on her petite frame, making her feel like one of those guilty men caught in the crosshairs of the Mafia boss. His eyes dropped, raking over her appearance, and Alice flushed under his scrutiny. Her simple gray maid's dress was smeared with dirt at the hem, and a faint stain darkened one sleeve. She hadn't exactly had time to clean herself up after everything that happened at the gambling den. But it was the way Leonardo's gaze narrowed, zeroing in on her wrist, that made her blood run cold. He descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing through the marble foyer like a death knell. Alice instinctively stepped back, her shoulders pressing against the closed door. She couldn't retreat any further. He had deliberately positioned himself between her and the rest of the house, caging her in the entryway with nowhere to run. "Where were you?" Leonardo repeated, his voice dropping into something dangerous as he closed the distance. Each footfall rang out like drums of fate. Alice felt her heart skittering wildly in her chest. She swallowed hard and tried to keep her voice steady. "I had a personal matter to take care of, Mr. Ferrara." The moment the answer left her lips, she knew how weak it sounded. Leonardo stopped inches away, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hand shot out, lightning fast but surprisingly gentle, catching her wrist and lifting it into the pale morning light. The purple bruises. The finger-shaped marks circling her delicate skin like a violent brand. Leonardo's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking beneath the stubble. When he spoke again, his voice had transformed into something lethal, barely controlled. "Who did this to you?" Alice had perfected the art of invisibility over 3 years in the Ferrara mansion. She moved through the palatial rooms like a ghost, her presence acknowledged only by the pristine surfaces she left behind. Fresh flowers in crystal vases. Marble floors that gleamed like mirrors. Meals prepared to perfection and served in silence. Leonardo Ferrara barely looked at her during the day. He was always on his phone, conducting business in low, threatening tones, or locked away in his study with men who arrived in expensive suits and left looking considerably paler. Alice preferred it that way. The less he noticed her, the safer she was. But when the sun set and the mansion fell silent, Alice shed her invisibility cloak and descended into hell. The Iron Syndicate's underground gambling den occupied the basement of an abandoned factory in Brooklyn. The air reeked of cigarette smoke, stale beer, and desperation. Men huddled around card tables, their eyes bloodshot and their pockets empty. Women in tight dresses served drinks and collected cash, their smiles brittle and their hands shaking. Alice worked the back rooms, carrying trays of whiskey to private poker games where the stakes ran into six figures. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. Every dollar she earned went straight into an envelope marked with her brother's name. Danny Hughes was 19 years old and drowning in $23,000 of gambling debt. The Iron Syndicate didn't care that he was just a kid. They didn't care that he'd made a stupid mistake trying to impress a girl. They only cared about their money. And when they didn't get their money, they collected in blood. "Hey, sweetheart." Razor's voice cut through the smoke-filled room like a rusty knife. He was the syndicate's chief enforcer, a man built like a brick wall with dead eyes and scarred knuckles. "You're short again this week." Alice's stomach dropped. She'd been short by $300. $300 she'd spent on Danny's insulin because her baby brother was diabetic and she'd had to choose between medication and the syndicate. She'd chosen wrong. "I'll have it next week," Alice whispered, taking a step back. "I promise." "Promises don't pay debts." Razor's hand shot out, fingers digging into her arm hard enough to make her gasp. "Maybe you need a reminder about what happens to people who don't keep their promises." His grip tightened, and Alice bit back a cry as his fingers ground into her flesh. She could feel the bruises forming, purple and yellow marks that would bloom across her skin like poisonous flowers. "Please," she managed. "My brother." "Your brother should have thought about that before he sat down at my table." Razor shoved her backward, and Alice stumbled, catching herself against the wall. "Next week. Full amount. Or baby brother learns what happens to deadbeats." Alice nodded, swallowed her tears, and stumbled out into the night. The cold air hit her face like a slap, but it couldn't wash away the shame and fear that clung to her skin. She had 4 hours before Leonardo woke up. 4 hours to get back to the mansion, clean herself up, and pretend that everything was fine. 4 hours to maintain the illusion that Alice Hughes was just an ordinary maid living an ordinary life. But as she slipped through the servant's entrance and crept toward her room, Alice should have known that Leonardo Ferrara didn't sleep. And he never missed a thing that happened under his roof. The light from his study spilled into the hallway, and Alice's blood turned to ice. He was waiting for her. "Personal?" Leonardo's voice was deadly quiet as he examined her wrist, his thumb tracing the bruises with unexpected gentleness that made Alice's breath hitch. His touch was careful, almost reverent, as if she were made of porcelain instead of flesh and bone. "These are finger marks, Alice. Someone put their hands on you." Alice tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, not painful, but unyielding. Like iron wrapped in velvet. "It's nothing, Mr. Ferrara. I'm fine. Just a misunderstanding." "You're not fine." His dark eyes lifted to hers, and Alice saw something terrifying there. Not anger directed at her, but fury so volcanic it made the air around them shimmer with heat. The temperature in the room seemed to drop and spike simultaneously. And this wasn't a misunderstanding. "Someone hurt you deliberately. Give me a name." "I can't," Alice's voice cracked. "A name." Each word was a bullet, sharp and lethal. Alice shook her head, panic rising in her chest like floodwater. "Please, you don't understand. If I tell you, they'll what?" Leonardo stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her chin, forcing her to look at him. His touch was gentle, but his eyes were merciless. "Hurt you? They already did. Kill you? Not while I'm breathing." "Alice, look at me." She did. And what she saw in Leonardo Ferrara's obsidian eyes made her knees weak. Possession. Protection. Something darker and infinitely more dangerous than either. "I've built an empire on fear," Leonardo said softly, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. Men cross the street when they see me coming. Grown men piss themselves when I walk into a room. I've broken bones, burned businesses, and buried bodies in foundations that will never be found. But looking at these bruises on your skin..." His jaw clenched, that muscle ticking again. "I want to burn the entire city down until I find the man who did this and make him wish he'd never been born." Alice's breath caught. "Why do you care? I'm just your maid." Something flickered across Leonardo's face, surprise, maybe, or pain. His hand slid from her chin to the back of her neck, his fingers threading through her hair. "Just my maid," he repeated, his voice rough. "Is that what you think you are to me? I don't know what else I would be." Leonardo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Alice, I know when you wake up. I know how you take your coffee, one sugar, no cream. I know you read romance novels in the library when you think I'm not home. I know you sing when you clean the East Wing, and you always sing the same song. Beyond the Sea. I know everything about you." Alice stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "You've been watching me? For 2 years." Leonardo's confession was raw, unfiltered. "Ever since the night I found you crying in the garden because it was your mother's birthday and she wasn't here to see it. You've been in my head, under my skin, in every thought I have. So no, Alice. You're not just my maid. You haven't been for a very long time." The admission hung between them, heavy and electric. "The men who hurt you," Leonardo continued, his voice dropping to that dangerous register again. "Where do I find them?" "Mr. Ferrara." "Leonardo." His grip on her neck tightened just slightly. "Say my name, Alice." "Leonardo," she whispered, and something in his eyes ignited. "Please. If you go after them, they'll know I told you." They'll what?" "Come after you." Leonardo's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "Let them try. I'll kill every single one of them before they get within a mile of you. It's not that simple. They have my brother." The words tumbled out before Alice could stop them, and Leonardo's entire demeanor shifted. The fury was still there, but now it was focused, controlled. "Lethal. Tell me everything," he said. "And I mean everything, Alice. No more secrets. No more lies. You're under my protection now, whether you like it or not." Leonardo Ferrara didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey that had long since gone warm, and stared at the file Marco had delivered an hour ago. Alice Hughes. Age 24. No living parents. One younger brother, Daniel Hughes, age 19. Outstanding debt to the Iron Syndicate, $23,000. The whiskey glass shattered in his hand. Leonardo didn't feel the glass cutting into his palm. He didn't feel anything except the volcanic rage that had been building since the moment he'd seen those bruises on Alice's skin. His Alice. The woman who sang when she thought no one was listening. The woman who left fresh flowers on his desk every morning. The woman who had somehow become the center of his entire world without him even realizing it. And someone had dared to hurt her. Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. He'd been Leonardo's right-hand man for 15 years, and he knew when his boss was about to unleash hell. "Boss," Marco said carefully. "Your hand." Leonardo looked down at the blood dripping from his palm, mixing with the spilled whiskey on his desk. He flexed his fingers, feeling the glass embedded in his skin, and smiled. "Get the kit," he said. "Then I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want eyes on Alice Hughes. 24/7 surveillance. I want to know where she goes, who she talks to, what she eats for breakfast. I want to know every breath she takes. Leonardo's voice was cold, controlled, but underneath was a current of barely restrained violence. And I want to know everything about the Iron Syndicate. Every operation, every enforcer, every safe house. I want their financial records, their supply chains, their dirty laundry. Everything. Marco's eyebrows rose slightly. The Iron Syndicate? Boss, they're small time. Barely worth our attention. They became worth my attention the moment they touched her. Leonardo wrapped his bleeding hand in a handkerchief, his dark eyes glittering with dangerous promise. I want to know who's running it, who their suppliers are, and where they keep their headquarters. Can you do that? Consider it done. Good. Leonardo stood, rolling his shoulders like a fighter preparing for battle. And Marco? This stays quiet. I don't want Alice to know I'm having her followed. She's already terrified enough. Understood. But boss. Marco hesitated. Are you sure about this? Getting involved with her brother's debt, going after the syndicate, it's messy. Personal. That's not how we do business. Leonardo's smile was sharp enough to cut. This isn't business, Marco. This is personal. The syndicate made the mistake of thinking they could extort money from a girl under my roof. They're about to learn what happens when you take something that belongs to Leonardo Ferrara. 2 nights later, Marco called with an update. Leonardo was in the middle of a meeting with his accountant, discussing offshore holdings and money laundering, when his phone buzzed. He saw Marco's name and immediately dismissed the accountant with a wave of his hand. Talk to me. Boss, you're not gonna like this. Marco's voice was tight with barely suppressed anger. Alice just left the mansion. She's heading to Brooklyn. To the Iron Syndicate's gambling den. Leonardo's blood turned to ice, then immediately boiled over. What? She's been going there every night for the past 6 months. Working as a waitress in their private rooms. She's trying to pay off her brother's debt herself. The phone creaked in Leonardo's grip. Every night? Every night you think she's sleeping, she's actually serving drinks to the same scum who are threatening her brother. Boss, the enforcer who put those bruises on her. His name is Razor. Real name Richard Kozlowski. He's got a record longer than my arm: assault, extortion, attempted murder. He's the syndicate's collector, and he's been roughing up Alice for weeks because she keeps coming up short on payments. Leonardo closed his eyes, fighting the urge to put his fist through the wall. Where is she right now? Just walked into the den. Boss, what do you want me to do? Follow her. Stay close enough to intervene if anything goes wrong, but don't let her see you. I want to know exactly what she's dealing with, and I want to know who else is involved. Leonardo's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. Tomorrow night, we pay the Iron Syndicate a visit. Prepare the crew. How many men? Leonardo's smile could have frozen hell itself. All of them. Alice woke to unfamiliar softness beneath her and the scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then her body reminded her exactly where she was and what had happened. The gambling den. Razor's threats. The desperate escape back to the mansion. And Leonardo, waiting for her like an avenging angel. She opened her eyes to find herself in an enormous bed with silk sheets, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. This wasn't her tiny room in the servants' quarters. This was... You're in my room. Alice's head snapped toward the voice. Leonardo sat in a leather chair beside the bed, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his dark hair mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. A first aid kit lay open on the table beside him, along with supplies Alice recognized from the mansion's medical cabinet. "What?" Her voice came out hoarse. "What am I doing here?" "You collapsed in the foyer." Leonardo's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed him. They were storm clouds ready to break. "Exhaustion, dehydration, and pain from injuries you've been hiding for weeks. Dr. Moretti came last night. He said you're lucky you didn't do permanent damage." Alice tried to sit up, and pain lanced through her ribs. She gasped, and Leonardo was beside her in an instant, his hands gentle as he eased her back against the pillows. "Don't move," he ordered, his voice soft but firm. "You cracked 2 ribs. Moretti wrapped them, but you need to rest." "I can't rest. I have work." "You're not working." Leonardo's tone left no room for argument. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not until you're healed. And you're sure as hell not going back to that gambling den." Alice's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I know everything, Alice." Leonardo reached for the first aid kit, pulling out antibiotic ointment and fresh bandages. "I know you've been working double shifts to pay off Danny's debt. I know the Iron Syndicate has been bleeding you dry for 6 months. I know that piece of shit Razor has been using you as a punching bag. And I know you've been doing it all alone because you're too stubborn and too scared to ask for help." Tears burned behind Alice's eyes. "You don't understand. If I stop paying, they'll kill Danny. They're not going to touch Danny." Leonardo's hands were impossibly gentle as he cleaned the cuts on her arms, his touch reverent despite the fury burning in his eyes. "They're not going to touch you. Not ever again." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." Leonardo finished wrapping her wrist and looked up at her, his dark eyes intense. "I'm Leonardo Ferrara. I own half of New York and terrify the other half. If I say you're under my protection, you're untouchable. Do you understand?" Alice's breath caught. "Why are you doing this?" Leonardo was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. When he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion he usually kept locked away. "Do you remember the night we met? 3 years ago?" Alice nodded. She'd been fresh off the bus from Ohio, scared and alone, applying for housekeeping positions she had no experience for. Leonardo had hired her on the spot, even though she'd had no references and her hands had shaken through the entire interview. "You asked me why I hired you," Leonardo continued. "Do you remember what I said? You said you saw something in me. Strength." "I lied." Leonardo's smile was sad. "I hired you because when you walked into my office, you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a monster. Not a Don. Just a man. No one had looked at me like that in years. Maybe ever." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with devastating gentleness. "You've been living under my roof for 3 years, Alice. Singing in the East Wing, leaving flowers on my desk, making this cold mansion feel like something close to a home. And every day, I've watched you and thought, there's goodness in the world. There's light. You were my proof that I hadn't destroyed everything I touched." Alice's tears spilled over. "Leonardo. You're not going back there," he said firmly. "You're not going to work yourself to death for men who don't deserve to breathe the same air as you. You're staying here, under my roof, under my protection. And if the Iron Syndicate has a problem with that?" His smile turned cold and sharp. "They can take it up with me. What about Danny?" "I'm handling Danny." Leonardo stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. In fact, I'm about to make a very generous offer to the Iron Syndicate. They're going to forgive Danny's debt, leave you both alone, and disappear from my city. Or they're going to learn what happens when they cross Leonardo Ferrara. Alice grabbed his hand, her fingers wrapping around his wrist. They'll fight back. They'll. Let them try. Leonardo's expression was carved from stone. Alice, I've been building my empire for 15 years. I've gone to war with families that made the Iron Syndicate look like children playing gangster. They have no idea what's coming for them. He leaned down, pressing his lips to her forehead in a gesture so tender it made Alice's heart ache. Rest, he murmured against her skin. I'll take care of everything. The call came at 2 a.m., shattering the fragile peace of the mansion. Alice jolted awake, her phone buzzing violently on the nightstand. She grabbed it with shaking hands, her heart already racing before she saw the unknown number. Hello? Alice? The voice was young, terrified, familiar. Alice, help me. Danny? Alice was out of bed in seconds, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Danny, where are you? What's wrong? They took me. Her brother's voice broke on a sob. Razor and his guys, they grabbed me outside my apartment. They said if you don't bring the money tonight, they're gonna. The phone was wrenched away, and Razor's gravelly voice came through the speaker like nails on a chalkboard. Hello, sweetheart. Did you really think you could hide behind your rich boss? Did you think Ferrara would protect you? Razor laughed, the sound making Alice's skin crawl. Here's how this is gonna work. You bring me 23,000 in cash, plus another 10 for my trouble. You come alone. And if I see any of Ferrara's men within a mile of the drop point, your baby brother loses a finger for every one of them. Understand? Please, Alice gasped. Please don't hurt him. I'll get you the money. Just don't. Midnight. Pier 17. Come alone, or Danny comes home in pieces. The line went dead. Alice stared at the phone, her entire body shaking. $33,000. She didn't have $33,000. She barely had $300 in her savings account. But Danny, God, Danny was 19 years old and terrified and she was halfway to her door when it burst open. Leonardo stood in the threshold, dressed in black tactical gear that made him look like death incarnate. His eyes were blazing with fury, his jaw set in a hard line. No, he said. They have Danny. Alice's voice broke as she tried to push past him. They're going to kill him if I don't. Leonardo caught her by the shoulders, his grip firm but gentle. You're not going anywhere near that pier. Let me go. Alice fought against him, her fists pounding uselessly against his chest. Tears streamed down her face, hot and bitter. He's my brother. He's all I have. I have to save him. I know. Leonardo pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head while she sobbed into his shirt. I know, Bellissima. But you're not doing this alone. Not anymore. They said no police, no backup, no. I'm not the police. Leonardo's voice was cold steel wrapped in velvet. And I'm not backup. I'm the man who's about to show the Iron Syndicate what happens when they threaten what's mine. Alice pulled back, looking up at him through tear-blurred eyes. What are you going to do? Leonardo's smile was dangerous, beautiful, terrifying. I'm going to get your brother back. And then I'm going to make sure the Iron Syndicate never threatens anyone in this city again. They'll kill you. They'll. Alice. Leonardo cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Look at me. Really look at me. She did. And what she saw stole her breath away. This wasn't Leonardo Ferrara, her employer. This wasn't even Leonardo Ferrara, the man who had bandaged her wounds and held her while she cried. This was someone else entirely. This was the Don. The man who had built an empire on fear and blood. The man who made grown men cross the street to avoid him. This was the most dangerous man in New York, and he was looking at her like she was worth burning the entire city down for. "They're not going to kill me," Leonardo said softly. "They're going to beg me for mercy. And I'm not going to give it to them. Leonardo. Stay here." He pressed his lips to her forehead, lingering for just a moment. "Marco will stay with you. He has orders to keep you safe, even if that means restraining you. I'll bring Danny home. I promise." "What if something goes wrong?" Leonardo's expression softened, just for a moment. "Then you'll know that the last thing I did in this life was protect the woman He stopped himself, his jaw clenching. "Just trust me, Alice. Please." Alice wanted to argue. Wanted to fight. Wanted to run out that door and throw herself into whatever nightmare waited at Pier 17. But when she looked into Leonardo's eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch. Not just determination or fury or violence. She saw love. Raw, unfiltered, all-consuming love. "Bring him home," she whispered. "I will." Leonardo kissed her forehead one last time, then turned to Marco, who had appeared silently in the hallway. "If anything happens to her while I'm gone, I'll kill you myself." Marco nodded. "Understood, boss." And then Leonardo was gone, disappearing into the night like a shadow with teeth. Alice sank onto the bed, her hands shaking, her heart racing. Marco stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "He'll bring your brother home," Marco said quietly. "The boss doesn't make promises he can't keep." Alice nodded, but she couldn't speak past the terror lodged in her throat. All she could do was wait. And pray that Leonardo Ferrara was as dangerous as everyone said he was. The Iron Syndicate's headquarters was a warehouse in Red Hook, sandwiched between abandoned factories and forgotten dreams. Leonardo knew the location well. He'd been tracking the Syndicate's movements for days, mapping their operations, identifying their weaknesses. Tonight, he would exploit every single one of them. Leonardo stood outside the warehouse at 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the ransom deadline. Behind him, 20 of his best men waited in the shadows, silent, lethal, ready. These weren't ordinary soldiers. These were the men who had helped him build his empire. Men who had shed blood in his name and would do it again without hesitation. "Remember," Leonardo said softly, his voice carrying in the cold night air. "I want the brother alive and unharmed. Everyone else." His smile was cold enough to freeze blood. "I don't care what happens to them." His men nodded, checking their weapons one last time. Leonardo pulled out his phone and dialed the number Razor had called from. It rang twice before the enforcer picked up. "Change of plans," Leonardo said conversationally. "Alice isn't coming." There was a pause, then Razor's laugh, ugly and mocking. "Ferrara. I should have known. Did your little maid come crying to you?" "She didn't have to. I know everything that happens in my city, Razor. Including what you've been doing to her." Leonardo's voice dropped, becoming something cold and lethal. "But we're not going to talk about that over the phone. I'm standing outside your warehouse right now. Come out, and let's discuss this like businessmen." Another pause. "You think I'm stupid enough to fall for that? I think you're smart enough to realize that I brought 20 men with me, and they're currently surrounding every exit to your warehouse. You have two options. Come out and talk, or I burn the building down with you inside it. Leonardo checked his watch. You have 1 minute to decide. The line went dead. Exactly 45 seconds later, the warehouse doors opened. Razor emerged, flanked by 6 of his men. They were armed. Leonardo could see the bulges of guns under their jackets, but they hadn't drawn their weapons yet. Good. They were still thinking like criminals instead of dead men. Ferrara, Razor said, his scarred face twisted into a sneer. You got balls, I'll give you that. But this doesn't concern you. The girl owes us money. Her brother owes us money. That's business. Business. Leonardo said the word like it tasted foul. You call extorting a girl working minimum wage business? You call beating her when she comes up short business? She knew the terms when her brother sat down at our table. She's under my protection now. Which means her debts are my debts. Leonardo pulled out his phone and showed Razor the screen. I've transferred $50,000 to an account in your name. That's Danny Hughes' debt, plus interest, plus a generous tip for your trouble. The debt is paid. Let the boy go. Razor's eyes widened slightly at the amount, but then his expression hardened. You think you can just buy your way out of this? That's not how it works, Ferrara. The girl works for us now. She's an asset. The girl's name is Alice. Leonardo's voice dropped to something barely human. And she's not an asset. She's mine. Yours? Razor laughed. What, you got a thing for your maid? That's pathetic, even for you. Leonardo smiled. Marco. The shot rang out before Razor finished laughing. One of the enforcers behind him dropped, a bullet hole in his kneecap. The man screamed, clutching his shattered leg. That was a warning, Leonardo said calmly, as if he hadn't just ordered someone to be shot. The next one goes through his skull. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time, very politely. Where is Danny Hughes? Razor's face had gone pale. You're starting a war over some kid? No. Leonardo's expression was carved from ice. I'm ending one. You made the mistake of thinking you could operate in my city without consequences. You made the mistake of thinking you could hurt someone under my protection. And now. He gestured to the warehouse. Now you're going to pay for those mistakes. We have the kid. Razor shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. You make a move, and he's dead. No, he's not. Leonardo's smile widened. Because 3 of my men are currently inside your warehouse, extracting Danny Hughes as we speak. By now, they've probably already gotten him to safety. Which means you have nothing to bargain with. As if on cue, Leonardo's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw Marco's message, package secured. The kid is safe. Checkmate, Leonardo said softly. Razor's face twisted with rage. You son of a... He went for his gun, and that was his final mistake. Leonardo moved like lightning, closing the distance between them in 3 strides. His fist connected with Razor's jaw, the impact echoing through the night like a gunshot. Razor stumbled backward, but Leonardo didn't give him time to recover. He grabbed the enforcer by the collar, lifted him off the ground, and slammed him against the warehouse wall. You put your hands on her, Leonardo hissed, his voice barely controlled fury. You made her bleed. You made her scared. For that alone, I should kill you. Razor gasped, clawing at Leonardo's hands. Ferrara, wait. But I'm not going to kill you. Leonardo's smile was cold and merciless. That would be too quick. Too easy. Instead, you're going to disappear. You and every member of the Iron Syndicate. You're going to leave New York tonight and never come back. Because if I ever see your face in my city again..." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'll make you wish you died tonight." He released Razor, letting the man crumple to the ground. Then Leonardo turned to his men. "Burn it," he said simply. Within minutes, the warehouse was engulfed in flames. The Iron Syndicate's headquarters, their records, their operations, everything they'd built reduced to ash and smoke. Leonardo watched it burn, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm. This was what happened when you touched what belonged to Leonardo Ferrara. Alice paced the length of Leonardo's bedroom like a caged animal, her heart racing with every passing second. Marco stood by the door, silent and watchful, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. It had been 2 hours since Leonardo left. 2 hours of silence and waiting and imagining every horrible thing that could go wrong. "He'll be fine," Marco said for the 3rd time. "The boss always comes back." What if? The sound of the front door opening made Alice's heart leap into her throat. She heard voices, Leonardo's deep baritone, and another voice, younger, frightened, familiar. "Danny!" Alice was out of the bedroom before Marco could stop her, racing down the grand staircase in her bare feet. And there, standing in the foyer with Leonardo's hand on his shoulder, was her baby brother. Danny Hughes looked thin and terrified, his dark hair mussed and his clothes dirty. But he was whole. He was alive. He was safe. "Alice!" Danny's face crumpled when he saw her, and then they were crashing together, Alice's arms wrapping around him as sobs tore from her throat. "You're okay," she gasped, her hands frantically checking him for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm fine. I'm okay." Danny hugged her back just as tightly, his own tears falling. "Alice, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. This is all my fault." "Shoo." Alice pulled back, cupping his face in her hands. "You're 19. You made a stupid mistake. But you're safe now. That's all that matters." She looked up at Leonardo, who stood watching them with an expression she'd never seen before. Something soft. Something almost vulnerable. "Thank you," Alice whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you for bringing him home." Leonardo nodded once, his dark eyes intense. "He'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps." "Next steps?" Danny wiped his eyes, looking between Alice and Leonardo with confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're getting out of New York," Leonardo said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I have a friend who runs a construction company in Denver. Clean work, good pay, far away from gambling dens and debt collectors. You'll start fresh." Danny's eyes widened. I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you." Leonardo's expression softened slightly. "Your sister has been bleeding herself dry to keep you alive. The least you can do is take the second chance she's earned for you." Danny looked at Alice, guilt and gratitude warring on his young face. "Al, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll go," Alice said firmly, even though her heart was breaking at the thought of her brother leaving. "Say you'll build a good life and never gamble again. Say you'll be safe." "I will." Danny hugged her again, holding on like she was the only solid thing in his world. "I promise. I'll make you proud." Leonardo cleared his throat. "Marco will show you to a guest room. Get some sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." As Marco led Danny upstairs, Alice stood in the foyer, her body trembling with relief and exhaustion and emotions too big to name. The tears kept coming, hot and fast, and she couldn't seem to stop them. Then Leonardo's arms were around her, pulling her against his chest. She collapsed into him, her fists clutching his shirt as she sobbed. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "Shoo." Leonardo's hand stroked her hair, his touch infinitely gentle. "You don't have to thank me, Bellissima. This is what I do for the people I love." Alice froze. Slowly, she pulled back, looking up at him with wide eyes. "What did you say?" Leonardo's jaw clenched, like he was fighting some internal battle. Then he sighed, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I love you," he said simply. "I've been in love with you for 2 years. Since the night you sang 'Beyond the Sea' in the East Wing and didn't know I was listening. Since the morning you left wildflowers on my desk because you thought I needed color in my life. Since every moment you've existed under my roof and made me feel like I was more than just a monster." Alice's breath caught. "Leonardo. I know I'm not good enough for you," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm a criminal. I've killed men. I've done things that would make you run if you knew the details. But when I saw those bruises on your wrist..." His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I realized that nothing in my life has ever mattered as much as keeping you safe. Not my empire. Not my reputation. Nothing." Alice stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "You love me. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything." She laughed, the sound watery and broken and beautiful. "You're an idiot." Leonardo's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? I've been in love with you for a year." Alice's confession tumbled out like a dam breaking. "Since the night you found me crying in the garden and sat with me until dawn without saying a word. Since every morning I leave you flowers and you pretend not to notice even though I see you smile when you think I'm gone. Since every day I exist in this mansion and feel safe for the first time in my life because you're here." Leonardo's expression transformed, hope and disbelief warring on his face. "You love me. I'm terrified of your world. I don't understand half of what you do. And I definitely don't approve of burning down warehouses." Alice reached up, her fingers tracing his jaw. "But yes. I love you. I think I've loved you since the moment you hired me even though I had no experience and you saw something in me worth saving." Leonardo closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against hers. "You're not the one who needed saving, Alice. I am." Then he kissed her. Soft and tender and desperate, like she was the air he needed to breathe. Alice melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, her heart soaring. When they finally pulled apart, Leonardo's smile was genuine, no coldness, no calculation, just pure, unfiltered joy. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not as my maid. Not as someone who works for me. Stay with me as the woman I love. The woman I want to wake up to every morning for the rest of my life." Alice's answer was another kiss, this one deeper, more certain. "Yes," she breathed against his lips. "Yes, yes, yes." 2 weeks passed in a blissful haze. Danny left for Denver with a job, an apartment, and a promise to call his sister every Sunday. The Iron Syndicate scattered to the winds, their operations dismantled, their leaders running scared. Alice moved from her tiny room in the servants' quarters to Leonardo's bedroom, and the mansion that had once felt cold and imposing now felt like home. But peace never lasted long in Leonardo Ferrara's world. The attack came during dinner. Alice was telling Leonardo about the new book she'd ordered for the library when she caught movement in her peripheral vision. A shadow where no shadow should be. A glint of metal reflecting candlelight. Leonardo! She threw herself sideways, shoving Leonardo out of his chair just as the gunshot shattered the silence. The bullet meant for Leonardo's head buried itself in the wall behind them, and Alice felt white-hot pain explode in her shoulder as a second shot found its mark. She hit the marble floor hard, her vision blurring. Somewhere above her, Leonardo roared, a sound of pure, animal fury that shook the chandelier. There was shouting, the sound of fists hitting flesh, bones breaking. Then Leonardo was kneeling beside her, his hands pressing against her shoulder, his face pale and terrified. Alice! Stay with me! Stay with me! His voice cracked on the words, desperate and raw. Marco! Get Dr. Moretti here now. I'm okay, Alice gasped, even though the pain was blinding. You're safe. That's all that matters. You're the one who got shot, you stubborn, beautiful. Leonardo's hands shook as he pressed harder against her wound, trying to staunch the bleeding. Don't you dare close your eyes. Don't you dare leave me. Alice tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. Not planning on it. You still owe me a proper date. Leonardo laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. I'll give you 1,000 dates. 1,000,000. Just don't, his voice broke. Please don't leave me, Bellissima. I can't lose you. Not going anywhere, Alice whispered, her hand finding his. Promise. She saw the attacker then, slumped against the wall with Marco standing over him, gun drawn. The man was unconscious, his face bloody, but Alice recognized him. One of Razor's lieutenants. A survivor of the warehouse fire. He came for revenge, Alice murmured, her vision starting to fade. He came for death, Leonardo corrected, his voice cold and hard. And I'm going to give it to him. But first, I'm going to make sure you're okay. Dr. Moretti arrived within 15 minutes, his medical bag in hand. Leonardo refused to leave Alice's side while the doctor worked, his hand gripping hers like a lifeline. The bullet went through clean, Dr. Moretti said as he stitched the wound. She'll be sore for a while, but she'll make a full recovery. Leonardo's entire body sagged with relief. Thank God. She saved your life, Leonardo. Dr. Moretti's expression was knowing as he finished bandaging Alice's shoulder. A few inches to the right, and that bullet would have hit you in the head. I know. Leonardo brought Alice's hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Believe me, I know. After Dr. Moretti left and Marco had dealt with the attacker, Leonardo carried Alice to their bedroom. He settled her carefully against the pillows, his touch reverent and gentle. You saved me, he said softly. You saw the danger before I did. You threw yourself in front of a bullet meant for me. Alice managed a weak smile. I told you. You're not allowed to die before we have our first proper date. Leonardo laughed, the sound rough with emotion. Alice Hughes, you are the bravest, most stubborn, most incredible woman I've ever met. And you're never, ever leaving my sight again. That might make bathroom breaks awkward. I'm serious. Leonardo cupped her face in his hands, his dark eyes intense. I nearly lost you tonight. When I saw you fall, when I saw the blood, he closed his eyes, his jaw clenching. I've faced down rival families, survived assassination attempts, built an empire from nothing. But nothing has ever terrified me the way seeing you hurt terrified me. Alice reached up, her fingers tracing his cheekbone. I'm okay. We're okay. We are now. Leonardo kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. But things are going to change. More security. Bulletproof glass. I'm not taking any chances with your life. Leonardo. I mean it, Alice. You're my world now. My entire world. And I will burn this city to ash before I let anyone hurt you again. Alice looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. The fierce, possessive, all-consuming love that had driven him to dismantle the Iron Syndicate. That had made him risk everything to save her brother. That would make him wage war on anyone who threatened her. I love you too, she whispered. My dangerous, overprotective, ridiculous man. Leonardo smiled against her lips. Ridiculous? Completely ridiculous. And I wouldn't have you any other way. Alice found the maid's uniform folded on the bed 4 weeks later, along with a note in Leonardo's sharp, precise handwriting. You don't work for me anymore. Her heart stuttered in her chest. After everything, after the confessions, the kisses, the promises, was he sending her away? She grabbed the uniform with shaking hands and went looking for him, panic rising in her throat. She found Leonardo in his study, standing by the window and staring out at the New York skyline with his hands in his pockets. Leonardo? He turned, and Alice's breath caught at the expression on his face. Not cold. Not distant. But vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. You left the uniform on my bed, she said, hating how her voice shook. With a note that says I don't work for you anymore. What does that mean? Leonardo crossed to her in 3 long strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. It means exactly what it says, Bellissima. You don't work for me. You never did, really. Not after the first month. I don't understand. Alice. Leonardo's thumb traced her lower lip, his touch tender. I can't have the woman I love scrubbing my floors and serving me dinner. I can't watch you work yourself to exhaustion trying to maintain professional distance when all I want is to hold you. I can't pretend you're my employee when you're so much more than that. Alice's eyes widened. So you're firing me? No. Leonardo pulled a small black box from his pocket, and Alice's heart stopped. I'm asking you to stay. Not as my maid. Not as my housekeeper. As mine. Completely and irrevocably mine. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, elegant and simple, a single diamond that caught the light and sparkled like captured starlight. I'm not asking you to marry me, Leonardo continued, his voice rough with emotion. Not yet. That's a conversation we'll have when you're ready. But I am asking you to be with me. To build a life with me. To let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Tears spilled down Alice's cheeks. You want me to stay? I want you to stay forever. Leonardo's smile was soft and genuine. I want morning coffee on the balcony and late-night conversations in bed. I want to watch you read in the library and listen to you sing in the East Wing. I want to protect you and spoil you and argue with you about putting yourself in danger. I want everything, Alice. All of it. With you. Alice laughed through her tears. You're asking. The great Leonardo Ferrara, asking. For you. Leonardo slid the ring onto her finger, his hand steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I'd ask 1,000 times. I'd beg if I had to. Alice looked down at the ring, then up at the man who had saved her brother, dismantled an entire criminal organization, and somehow fallen in love with his maid. The man who ruled New York with an iron fist but held her like she was made of glass. The most dangerous man in the city, looking at her like she held his entire world in her hands. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. The coffee, the conversations, the arguments. The life. Everything. Leonardo's smile transformed his face, making him look younger, lighter, free. Everything. Everything. Alice pulled him down for a kiss, pouring 3 years of longing and fear and love into it. "You're stuck with me now, Ferrara." "Good." Leonardo lifted her easily, carrying her toward the door. "Because I'm never letting you go." As he carried her through the mansion, their home, Alice caught sight of the maid's uniform still clutched in her hand. She stopped Leonardo in the hallway, took the uniform, and walked to the fireplace in the library. "What are you doing?" Leonardo asked. Alice looked back at him, a fierce smile on her face. "Burning the past." She threw the uniform into the flames and watched it catch, the gray fabric curling and blackening in the heat. It felt symbolic. Freeing. Like she was shedding a skin that had never quite fit and stepping into the woman she was always meant to be. Leonardo came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her uninjured shoulder. "No regrets," he murmured against her ear. Alice turned in his arms, her hands sliding up his chest to link behind his neck. "Not a single one." Outside the window, the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The city that had tried to break her now sprawled beneath them, beautiful and brutal and theirs. Alice Hughes had come to New York 3 years ago with nothing but hope and desperation. She'd survived poverty, violence, and fear. She'd sacrificed everything to save her brother and nearly destroyed herself in the process. But standing in Leonardo Ferrara's arms, wearing his ring and his love like armor, Alice finally understood the truth. She wasn't the maid anymore. She wasn't invisible or powerless or alone. She was the woman who had captured the heart of New York's most dangerous man. And nothing in this city, or any other, would ever hurt her again. The end. Hope you enjoyed this story. Stay tuned for more interesting and captivating tales. Please like, subscribe and share.